had a advisor that if you seemed to know where you were going and what you were doing, all he'd do was sign the sheet and you'd register and take the classes. So I was still looking around, and this friend of mine comes running in. He was in track. He opens the door and he says, "Lyle, you decided what you're going to do?" And I said, I was in the sweat room, and I said, "Oh, Glenn, I don't know." And I went through what I just said, and I said, "I know one thing is I don't want driver's ed. I don't know." And he says, "Speech correction. You'll love it. We work with kids." He said, "We got the prereqs, we've got anatomy, we've got physiology, we've got kinese. They don't even require kinese, you know." So I went over and talked to the guy, and he said, "Oh yeah, you've got the basic prereqs, you ought to do this." And so it was Wayne Thurman, it was a one-person program in those days. And so I went into that program and really started applying myself to the books. I mean, before I was always getting along okay, no trouble. But I did well enough that I could then also take an extra course, which you had to have a B average, take an extra course, and I always just missed a B average, you know, good C guy, you know. Anyway, then the thing was I did finish in what they called speech correction in those days. Went into the schools in Illinois. And a couple of interesting things about that for your history stuff. This was back in the 50s, and if a child was in, Illinois had a fairly progressive program in those days in education. If the child was in speech path or speech correction, that was the one special service they could get. Or they could, if they were intellectually impaired, mental retardation we called it then, intellectually impaired, they could be in a room for mental retardation, but they didn't get speech correction services. That was the way it was in the 50s. That was common practice in what we now call speech pathology, because the prognosis was so poor, you know, you only did one or the other, so forth. Anyway, so I got interested and did speech correction in the schools a little bit, and then went on, again, that advisor wanted me to go on to graduate programs, and so ended up doing my master's. In those days you could do a master's in speech path kind of part-time, like I was in the schools, summer courses. One time I took an evening course in Illinois and got my degree there, and then went on for the doctorate. And during that graduate study, the master's part, I did more in audiology than in speech path. So I ended up being certified both ways. And during my doctoral program, which was at Iowa, and I had a family then, so I was actually given a instructorship, which gave me full-time work, but only 6 credits a semester and so forth. And what I consider one of my, I've already said a couple of very fortunate things that happened, you know, people that really helped along the way. But there was an announcement for a job in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Now, most people in assistive tech, if they watch this, won't understand the significance of that, but there was a man there named Charles Van Riper, who in my day, we had gods in speech pathology. We don't have any gods anymore for the students, but we did. And Charles Van Riper was what I call the Zeus or Thor of the gods. You know, he was the god of gods. And so there was this community hearing and speech center advertising for an audiologist with a little statement saying possibility of teaching audiology at Western Michigan, where he was. So I wrote, and they ended up hiring me, and I went there, and was kind of completing my degree slowly. And I won't go into all the details of that because most of the people wouldn't be interested in that part. But it happened that he was going to have the Western Michigan was going to expand their program, but he had to hire a person with a degree if he could find one. And so he did go to the convention, but he told me beforehand, he said, no, he didn't like audiologists, by the way, because he called them button pushers and dial twirlers, because all he thought audiologists did was testing. Well, I got him once, I said, well, Dr. Van, I said, how many PhD speech pathologists do speech work like you do? And he looked at me and he said, you booger, you. And because that was kind of a term of endearment, I think.